Why, hello, it is Josh Bloom, the Josh Bloom Podcast, another episode of TikTok Rants. I wanted to get this out right away because TikTok might be going away any minute. We might get a Supreme Court ruling any second, really. So if it is not TikTok Rants, I feel like I will continue to do this in some way, shape, or form. Before we get into the first rant, I guess I need to take it down a notch because this is a pretty serious one. I had a friend pass away, and when I say friend, I hadn't seen him in a couple of years. It is because he had some personal problems that really got in the way of any sort of productive friendship. This was not a difficult thing to talk about, but it is a somber thing to talk about. So here it is. It's called I Lost a Friend This Week, and I will be back right after.
I only knew my friend died this week because I had gone to his Facebook page and I saw that another friend of his had posted something along the lines of, "I'll always miss you," etc. And I thought it was that person who had passed away. And when I realized it was my friend, I looked at the comments, I dug deeper and realized that it was my friend. And when I say my friend, I haven't seen this guy since just before the pandemic. We didn't have any kind of falling out. The thing is, the entire time I knew him, he was a substance abuser, and I had gotten to the point in my life where it just wasn't good for me anymore to hang out with someone who was continuing to abuse in that way. When I say substance abuse, I get into the details, but hardcore enough where they had a tolerance level that allowed them to really be abusive. And it was scary. And as much as I cared about him, I obviously care about myself more. And it's not like we had a breakup or anything like that. We stayed in scattered touch. And in fact, in April of last year, he had reached out saying, "Let's get coffee." And I responded to him and I said, "How are you doing? How's your health?" And he said, "No comment," which meant to me that it's probably not good to hang out. But we had a chit chat online. And I checked in with him again in November and did not hear back from him at that point. And then what I just told you. And I'm the kind of person where it's like I just put these things in some kind of emotional box. It's not like I ignore it. It's not like I it's not like I bury my head in the sand. It's not like I handle anything like that. But I don't know if I'm totally in touch with how much these things really affect me. So over this week, I found out he passed on Sunday, I believe. I found out about it on Tuesday. So over this week, I've been realizing, and maybe if you're listening to this and you have had this kind of experience, you've gone through this as well. Now that someone's life is in a beginning, middle, and an end perspective, and you start to realize you were closer with them than you thought you were. You know, I hadn't seen him in quite some time, but he was there for me when some stuff was going on. He had my back when some stuff was going on. And then I started to think about the things we did together. Went to a Lindsey Buckingham concert together. He was a massive Stevie Nicks fan. He had Stevie Nicks tattoos. We went to a Lindsey Buckingham concert. I introduced him to the film Showgirls, which is one of my all-time favorite bad movies, and he went berserk for it. He absolutely loved it. We went to see it at the Alamo Drafthouse. It was like a night out. It was fun. And then I remembered, he had given me a birthday gift. He was a Stevie Nicks collector as well. He had lots of Stevie Nicks memorabilia. He gave me a copy of his from his vinyl collection of her album Rock a Little. He wrapped it. He wrapped it so thoughtfully that I kept the wrapping. I put it into one of those frames that you can put a record cover into, and I kept the wrapping and I put it into the back of the frame. It's been hanging on my door. I didn't even remember it was there. You know, you have stuff hanging in your house. You don't remember it's there. You don't think about it every time you walk past it. And I realized there it is. In fact, he had put a bow on it, and I had stuck the bow to the front of the frame. And I went to the memorial page where people were leaving, comments and remembrances of him. And obviously, there's nothing there about how he passed. There's nothing there referencing his troubles, just the good things about him. And he was a character. And I'm looking out at this parking lot right now, and I see a Honda there. And he had taken me to, when I was trying to buy a car, he was very knowledgeable about cars. He was a professional plumber and very, very good at his job, and very, very proud of how good he was at his job. And it's amazing to me to think about just how great people can be, and how talented people can be, and how good at their jobs people can be, and what a good friend people can be, while all the time this is going on, suffering deeply with pain. I remember I was going to the airport early one day, and he let me stay at his place because it was closer to the airport. He suggested, stay overnight at my place. So I did, and his house was a total wreck. His house was such a wreck, but his space was always nice and neat, but there was chaos going on around him. And it was a reminder. And he had one of these big dogs, a pit bull. I believe it was a pit bull. It was one. At least it looked like a pit bull. And this dog was scary. This dog was scary. Chaos all around. I'm just staring off in the distance because I'm thinking about him and remembering him. I've been thinking about him all week. Just chaos all around him, and chaos inside. He was constantly breaking up, and new boyfriends in his life, and I could not keep it straight. And he would talk to me as if I remembered every single person and every single boyfriend and every single relationship he had. He would talk to me as if I remembered every single one of them, and I would just play along, because I realized after knowing him for a short time, there was no way I was going to possibly keep up with what was going on in his life. So I just would listen and kind of just play along, I could remember all these cast of characters. But he was just an absolute nut. He really was just crazy. He would say anything to anyone at any time. If you got in his face, he would make sure you knew about it. He was completely fearless, and I think almost it's that fearlessness is what contributed to his early demise. Because when you just are okay with whatever happens at any given time, then you know that something might happen at any given time. And I had already missed the guy, because when someone is that deep into an illness, you kind of always sort of feel like they could go at any moment. So you kind of prepare yourself for it. But when you see a memorial page and you see a date of death, it's pretty powerful to see. And I hope he's at peace. Obviously now it's that's what people say when people die. But I truly do hope he is at peace. And it is really just overwhelming when you think about beginning, middle, and end, that you were there, and that you held a place in their life for a time, and that time was so much closer to the end of their life than you ever could have imagined it was.
Hey, that was a little bit of Stevie right there at the end in tribute. I was putting that together in the Panera today, and I teared up. I'm like, Josh, are you tearing up just because you edited this in a way to make yourself tear up, or are you tearing up because Stand Back will forever remind you of your friend? And probably something like both, but man, I'll never listen to that song again without thinking of this guy. The next piece is about the TikTok ban, and I think the next one after that is about the TikTok ban, and I think the next one after that is about the TikTok ban. For real, man. This kind of sucks for me as a very micro creator. I imagine it sucks in a major way for the many people that have based their entire livelihoods around TikTok and have massive followings on TikTok. And the point I am making here in this piece called We Are Already Traumatized is that we are already traumatized. Even if they don't take it away, I feel like we're gonna feel like, well, it's gonna take it away at any point anyway. We are already traumatized.
Get your freedoms taken away Sunday. We have a few days left until the government of the United States subverts the will of 170 million Americans by taking away the TikTok app. And I have to say something. Even if they don't take it away, even if they kick it down the road 90 days or they overturn it or whatever, we are traumatized already. We have already been put in a position where we are now have to be, heads up, alert, that if you enjoy this, if you are simply entertained by TikTok, if you are someone who makes a living on TikTok, if you are someone who relies on TikTok for emotional support or just a little break from the mundane day that you're living, it may just be taken away at any time. And who gets to decide that? Some people, a few people who were elected in some cases were just appointed, just some people who went to school, did some papers. I've talked about Alito before. He's good at going to school, good at doing papers, good at sitting in his dorm room and doing a little research, going to the library. So since he went to the library, did some papers, and got this job as a Supreme Court justice, he gets to decide what 170 million Americans get to do with their time and livelihood. Now, I have mentioned this documentary called Beyond Utopia, which is a very, very, very fine film about a family escaping North Korea. Now, of course, when I watch this, I'm like, well, it's a good thing it's not like that here in America. In North Korea, you are required to have a picture of Kim on your wall. And if you do not, that is against the law. And men are able to choose between, I believe, a dozen haircuts that are on the wall, and you get to choose one of them. It's not like that here in America. Well, guess what? Aren't our choices being infringed upon day after day after day? The TikTok ban looming has been one thing that has made this week particularly bad for me. I also had a friend die. I also started thinking about another friend of mine who holds it together really well, but came from a family that did not hold it together very well, and therefore she has a sibling who does not hold it together very well. And when I say don't hold it together very well, I mean barely able to hang on to life. And this friend and I only really talk at the times when she wants to talk, and I like it like that, because I know that she wants to be in the best position she can be at any given time when she's talking to me, because that's how she's learned to deal with life. And I guess I've spent this past week digging a little deeper into my understanding of life in a way that I haven't before, because of all these things that have been looming this week. Not just the TikTok ban, just not my friend dying, not just this other friend, and kind of realizing like the state of her life and how she copes. It's made me kind of dig into how I cope. We gotta live. we gotta LIVIN. We gotta be living, because we just don't have time. And frankly, that's not about the blip that is life. This is getting to be about the blip that is being able to live the way we want to live, because that's another thing that's bothering me. Obviously, the incoming administration that we have, and how they are talking about the different ways they're going to lock down, how they're going to set up phone numbers to deport people, just on and on and on. And this is not even about politics anymore. This is simply about you, me, as individuals with hopes and dreams and things we'd like to do that other people who just are no better than us, because no one is better than another one. We have just all been granted a little bit of time to feel as if we are perceiving consciousness here on planet Earth. And all of a sudden, these motherfuckers, Supreme Court, Congress, government, at this point, I don't even give a shit about Democrat, Republican. I'm talking about all these rich dudes Mostly dudes. Vast majority dudes, because dudes are just garbage. Dudes are Earth's garbage. Most of these dudes who is spending all their time trying to control what other people do, and them trying to talk about how they're worried about the Chinese stealing our data when every single app that exists on the planet ever since the internet was created, our information and data has been open for the taking. We all know this. We all know this is ridiculous. This is Mark Zuckerberg lobbying Congress in order to get rid of his competition, which you can understand. It's understandable. That's how business is done. You think on Little House on the Prairie that Mrs. Olsen would tolerate someone else coming into that town and opening up their own mercantile? Hell no. I hope you got that reference, but you know what I'm saying. Any business. I'm in a coffee shop. This coffee shop's not going to. There's another coffee shop right around the corner. They do a different thing in that coffee shop. So it's one vibe versus another vibe. But if someone else moved in with the same vibe, I don't think they'd like that very much. I think they would do what they had to do to try to attract the customers to keep their business going. I understand you, Mark. I understand why you do what you do. Too bad, dude. Too bad. You unfortunately never developed something as good as TikTok. People keep talking about it like I'm going to go here, I'm going to go there. We all know like TikTok is not about just the functionality, which is a big point of it all because it's very functional. Even the bugs in the TikTok app have become something that I've come to enjoy. Like, oh, it does that. You know, it does that. It makes me feel like I understand it. I'm part of it. We all know there's no community anywhere else like this TikTok. What I have seen on here, what I have learned on here, the people that I have seen on here and interacted with on here who have allowed themselves to feel free to do as they please on here, you are just not going to find that anywhere else because most people are not going to feel so free to do what they do on here anywhere else. And the government don't like that. They are taking that away. America is now, at least in my timeline is experiencing the lockdown because this country's always been locked down. As we know, it was born in lockdown. They locked it down when they got to these shores, and then once they got done locking that down, they started locking down people that they brought over. Locking down is what they like to do because dudes like to lock people down because dudes are afraid of freedom because freedom is not something they can control. So, unfortunately, we are at a place right now where we are going to have to deal with giving up rights and giving up freedoms and giving up avenues by which to express ourselves. And this is something that is causing me to dig a hell of a lot deeper into my consciousness and deeper into myself to better understand what I can do to maintain my own sense of freedom, to maintain my own voice, to take what is happening right now with TikTok, friends dying, friends doing the best they can not to die, to take all of those things and to use them to make me a better version of myself. And I would love to tell you about it, but unfortunately, the Supreme Court justices look like that. They just aren't going to let that happen. So, how unfortunate for all of us. I'm glad they all went to school and did their homework in order to be able to tell us all how to live.
So right after I recorded that, I got home and I had more thoughts because I had this sense memory about the TikTok ban and what it feels like to have the rug pulled out from under. So this, I got home and immediately started recording again. So this is almost just a continuation of where I left off. And it's called Mom and Dad Are Getting Divorced.
It's like when my parents told me they were getting divorced. It's that kind of sense memory, this TikTok ban. And I'll tell you, when my parents picked me up from summer camp after I had been bullied for 2 weeks straight, and the first thing they tell me, because that's how they were, this is the kind of parents I had, the first thing they say is, by the way, we're getting divorced. You need to choose who you're going to live with. That I just had a sense memory
of that about this TikTok ban. It is like security, home, what we know is being ripped from us, and we're being forced to pack up our shit and go somewhere else, and we don't like the options. And it's funny, what I want to say about living with my parents when they were together, that wasn't that amazing either. And I think that about TikTok. There's all sorts of drama on TikTok. There's all sorts of shit that goes down on TikTok that we don't like. Obviously, there's sides of TikTok that we don't like, but somehow it feels like home. It feels like where we belong. It's what we know. So when I was growing up in a household with all sorts of drama and all sorts of bad attitudes and all sorts of neglect, somehow, like, at least I could, like, count on what I was gonna get. I, like, at least knew what to expect. And now it's being ripped out from under us. And look, I'm everywhere else. I've been everywhere else, you know. And when I say everywhere, everywhere, because I don't want to miss out on people who maybe only use this app or maybe only use that app. So that's not really it. It's really about, like, TikTok being this place where I feel secure, where I feel like I can talk and act a certain way. Like when I was growing up, go in my bedroom. That was my bedroom with my wallpaper and my drawers full of my crap. And that was my little space to get away from it all. And that's what tick like that's what tick like is like. Tick likey TikTok like. That's what TikTok's like to me. It's like, once I'm done with all the other apps or done, look, I don't want to make it sound like I'm spending all my time on apps, because I do not. But when I want to, like, just see, well, what's going on? What's going on? I don't go to any other app, because other apps, like, they might show me some things that are interesting on some level, but they don't show me what's going on. When you want to know what's going on, you go on TikTok. So this little feeling came up, and boy, it is visceral. I remember being in that car, like, just desperate to get away from that summer camp, and they picked me up, and I don't remember how old I was. I think I was 9, maybe 8 or 9. And then that's the kind of parents I had. Not how are you, because they knew how it went. Nothing like that. Just like, hey, we're getting divorced. Fuck you. Too bad. That's what this feels like. That's why I hate you, Supreme Court. And I'm not talking about right wing. I'm not talking about left wing. I'm talking about all the wings. All of that really happened to me. It was an awful summer. I am still trying to recover from what was done to me. There are, I'm sure, many videos and poems and short stories to come that describe exactly what I went through in detail. I'm not mad at anybody. I am just upset that I had to be that person who endured that kind of abuse for that long. Because who wants that? Nobody wants it. Hey, here's another piece that I would like to present to you, and it is about something that's happening in the world. It's the TikTok ban, but this is also closely related to what we are about to experience in our government, and hopefully by experiencing it through our government, it doesn't infect our daily lives quite as much as I fear it will. Here is the piece called "An App is Worse Than Swearing in a Criminal and Convicted Felon?" That's a question mark at the end. I think you know the answer. I'll be back right after.
I was just shopping for some red cabbage at the local grocery store before I came over here to the P, and I took the moment to have a listen to the current confirmation hearing for the potential Secretary of Defense that we have coming in. Now, I won't get into this person's credentials, but as a Donald Trump nominee, you can probably assume the qualifications of such a person. He struck me as a individual who was well prepared to say what he thought needed to be heard. He spent quite a bit of time in his opening statement talking about how he prays every morning with his wife. Okay. And Jesus being his Lord and Savior. Okay, I guess that's the way it is for some people. He mentioned his 7 children and tried to rattle off their names and could not. He forgot one of them, but that's all right. They had some very complex, very long names that I think one of them was named Henderson. But even if it was not Henderson, you kind of get where I'm going with this. What I found exhilarating about these hearings is during his opening statement, he was interrupted not once, not twice, but 3 times by protesters who were very, very vocal and screaming and yelling before they were escorted out of the room, which was met with the rhetoric of the Republican chairman of the committee who said, we will not tolerate this, and you will be taken out of this room. I just want to let you know that the Capitol Police will take you out of this room. Yeah, no shit, Sherlock. That's how it works. So the protesters know that's how it works, and it is very interesting to hear a Republican congressman talking about how the Capitol Police will do that when they weren't protecting no Capitol Police on January 6th. I'll tell you that much. They were running away while the Capitol Police were protecting them. And as you may or may not know, which you probably don't, because who the hell pays attention to this stuff but me? I believe it is Mike Johnson, the current Speaker of the House, that has yet to put up a plaque honoring the fallen Capitol Police from that date. And when I say fallen, a lot of people talk about like the Capitol Police that died that day. Most of the Capitol Police that died related to January 6th were not actually killed there during the day. It is more tragic, actually, as far as I'm concerned. There are several police who, as they say on this app, unalived themselves days afterwards. So the reason I find that more tragic is that gives you a clue as to how insanely traumatic that day was for them, that they could not see continuing to live after that. So, but anyway, sure, put the Fox News host. Now, he did serve in the military. I respect that. But put this 40-something-year-old Fox News host in charge of a $700 billion budget and the entire military. Go right ahead. Let's see how that works out. I know a lot of talk this week has been about the TikTok ban, and while I have talked about it too, there are a couple more thoughts that are related to what's going on with today's confirmation hearing and the upcoming inauguration of as of today. The report has been released on January 6th, about January 6th, I should say, which details in in black and white on paper, thank you, Jack Smith, the crimes of Donald Trump, and Jack Smith's qualified assertion that he would absolutely have been convicted of these crimes. So, do I think the media is going to make any sort of point of pointing out all the criminality in this report? I doubt it, because they are afraid of losing their paycheck. And do I think there will be any consequences? No, the consequences are all of these crimes were committed, and on top of that, Donald Trump is now a convicted felon in the state of New York, tried, convicted by a jury of his peers, and sentenced. He is now, in, I believe, less than a week, going to be inaugurated as the 47th president of the United States, as someone who has a report out about him and all the crimes he committed on January 6th and leading up to rig the election and to convince his supporters that it was stolen when it was not, and also putting his hand on the Bible and raising his hand to be sworn in as president as a convicted felon. Now look, this is life, this is the world, this is reality, this is what we have to deal with. It's here. But isn't this a bizarre world that we are living in, a bizarre universe? And aren't we, as members of society, alive on planet Earth at this time and perceiving reality and perceiving existence, aren't we in a most bizarre timeline? Now, how this relates to TikTok is that's where a lot of us are getting our news at this point, because we actually trust other creators more than we trust these billionaires and the people on the news who are just getting paid and paid and paid and paid and taking big vacations wherever they want to go. And as soon as Donald Trump's elected, flying down to Mar-a-Lago to get back in favor with him. So not only do they do they not lose their paycheck, but they're not prosecuted. Now that TikTok's potentially being taken away, and frankly, I'm pretty pissed off at both Donald Trump and Joe Biden on this one, because both of them signed orders at one point to get rid of TikTok, even though now, Donald Trump's capitulating, and I don't know what, Joe Biden's probably just packing his bags, making sure there's no classified documents in there. A lot of creators, big creators, have been wondering, where do we go? What do we do? Now, that is a legitimate thing, because a lot of these creators make their living on here, and they have an audience on here, and built a lot of their life around TikTok. So I'm surprised they're not freaking out more. But some of these creators who have millions of followers have obviously been contemplating the idea of, where do we go? What do we do? And there's this app called RedNote that has seemed to emerge as the one to go to. And the irony of all this is that RedNote is a Chinese app. Unlike TikTok, which is owned by ByteDance, which is in China, which this false argument that somehow it's exclusive to ByteDance that they're getting the U.S. citizens' data. Every app on the planet, every single app or whatever from the dawn of the internet has every bit of information, so don't you worry about that. They targeted ByteDance because Mark Zuckerberg lobbied Congress because he's worried about his competition. Another billionaire, just don't have enough. I got a bunch of billions, but I need more billions, because now Elon's going to be a trillionaire, and now what do? Now what do? I grew my hair, it's curly, and I took MMA or whatever. I learned how to fight, and that's not enough. I still look down in my pants, and I don't like what I see. So that's Mark Zuckerberg. So it seems like the consensus is to go over to this RedNote app, which is actually Chinese based. It's so Chinese based that all the everything on there is in Chinese. But you can figure out how to work it, so people are going over there. So I went over there. And I signed up an account. Now I got a Chinese app on my phone. I'm an early adopter-ish, so I waited a few days to see where people were going and what they were doing. And I went on this RedNote, and I'm like, why not? Why not? It's like, it's fun. It's like the emojis are different. I don't know what people are saying. I don't know what's happening. I uploaded a couple things. It got likes. It got follows. I'm like, okay, great. So I think this is a bit of a backfire so far, but if you're going to take TikTok away, and instead of us getting to have TikTok, we get to have a Secretary of Defense who is accused of all sorts of horrible things and is clearly unqualified for the job, I guess that is our opportunity to accept and deal with and organize ourselves around a reality that none of us could have predicted. And I truly believe that I'm going to be stronger for it, and I believe that you are going to be stronger for it too.
Hey, so if you're listening to this after the inauguration, I hope that you are allowed to listen to podcasts or anything else in the media that you want to listen to from now on, because I have a feeling there's going to be some pressure, because there already has been some pressure on the media to report a certain way, to entertain us in a certain way that a certain person would prefer. But hey, we shall see. I don't want to leave you without this little bonus that I recorded just this morning while I was walking around the track in 20-something weather, and it's a good time for me when I'm doing that to kind of, get pissed off about something, because it makes the blood boil a little bit and warms me up. This is called And before I tell you, I realize this is not a topic that is going to be revelatory. This is something that everyone knows, and I'm sure that Jerry Seinfeld has talked about this in every act he's done since 1964. This is called To the People Who Don't Use Turn Signals.
People who don't use turn signals. Now, you are a giant steaming piece of shit. I know you know that, but I do have a question. Now, I am not sure if turn signal use is binary. I gotta admit it. I feel like I'm a person who, if I didn't use a turn signal at some point, it was a completely nonsensical error, because I honestly don't think I've ever made a turn in my car without using one. There are people who I would assume, I don't follow them all over the place, who never use them. So I'm wondering, are there people who sometimes, every once in a while, use a turn signal? And when they do, how does that happen exactly? Are there special occasions by which they are like, this is the kind of turn that I'm going to use a turn signal. This feels like my moment. Or do they think maybe it's a particularly dangerous area and it's like, this is one of those times when I am going to warn my fellow driver, but I just have a hard time believing that, because going back to my initial point about people who don't use turn signals being giant steaming piles of shit, I don't think they would go ahead and give a shit about another driver. So maybe they just use it occasionally to, be like, I want to be really confident in this turn. I want to assure myself that I am making a turn. So therefore, I'm going to let myself know that by using this little lever. I really am just perplexed by this. I am wondering if what I imagine to exist does exist, that there are people who sometimes use them. But I just assume there are people who use turn signals because that is how you drive, in a way to warn people what the hell you are doing on the road. And then there are people who just don't use them at all, because that is an indicator, no pun intended, about the rest of their lives, where they go around not giving a shit about anyone but themselves. Let me know.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Josh Bloom Podcast, TikTok Rants. I will continue to do this as long as I continue to have these incredibly long diatribes that I must speak into a microphone, which actually did happen again today. So I already have some stuff for next week, but there will be other content coming soon. This article about me being a sociopath in many different types of coffee shops, and when I say sociopath, I'm being hyperbolic, but you will get an impression, and I think I am going to split this into two pieces, so I will leave you with a cliffhanger. Thank you again for listening. I will be back next week. Have a good day.